大家早上好。这个是9月29号的新闻，讲的是孔杰荣律师的逝世。这位美国律师，从介绍上来看的话，他就是致力于研究中国的一个法律体系的一个先驱人物。然后他经常就中国的人权问题公开发声，所以上周一在曼哈顿的家中去世，享年95岁。如果《纽约时报》中文网刊登了，那让我们一起来阅读一下这个讣告。Jerome Cohen, lawyer who plumbed Chinese legal system, dies at 95. Jerome Cohen, who pioneered the study of China's opaque legal system, was one of the first foreign lawyers to practice in China and became a voice against human rights abuse there, died on Monday at his home in Manhattan. He was 95. His death was confirmed by his son, Asen and Peter. Mr. Cohen created the field of the study of Chinese law in the United States. Stephen Orleans, the president of the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations and a former student and colleague of his, said in an interview, "It's rare to find a field where in the beginning it was so shaped by one person." Mr. Cohen originally appeared destined for a conventional, if illustrious, career as a law professor. After graduating from Yale Law School, he clerked for 2 Supreme Court justices and took a job at the Law School of the University of California, Berkeley, where he taught mainstream topics. But an opportunity arose for him to study the Chinese languages and Chinese law, and he signed on to the bereavement of some colleagues at a time when China was convulsed by political revolution and Americans were generally banned from visiting the country. After learning the language, Mr. Cohen interviewed people from mainland China who had fled to Hong Kong to gain insights into how courts and prosecutors work under Mao Zedong. He later established a program in East Asian law at Harvard Law School, where he was a member of the faculty from 1964 to 1979. After Mao died and China began to cut Western investment, Mr. Cohen took another career leap to law firms. He advised foreign companies and educated Chinese officials who were hungry for knowledge about conventional law. In 1990, Mr. Cohen began teaching at New York University, where he hosted lawyers, judges, and human rights advocates from China, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and elsewhere. Until his death, he remained vocal about China's increasingly repressive turnover under President Xi Jinping. News of Mr. Cohen's death prompted an all-pointed tributes from politicians, lawyers, academics, and activists across Asia, many of whom are a part of their careers and even their freedom to him. One tribute came from Xu Zhangrun, a law professor in China who had Mr. Kong's support when he was forced out his job and placed under heavy police surveillance after criticizing Mr. Xi. His passing truly marks the end of era. Mr. Xi wrote an eulogy published in the online journal China Heritage. For Jerome Cohen, the idea of legal rights was always grounded in a respect for basic human rights. Jerome Allen Cohen was born on July 1, 1930 in Elizabeth, NJ, and raised in nearby London, the younger of two sons of Felix Cohen, a lawyer, and Patrice Cohen, a school teacher. He excelled in high school and attended Yale University, where he majored in international relations before entering the law school there. Which in college he met Joan Debert. They married in 1954. She survives him, as do his three sons, Ashton, Peter, and Seth. 7 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren. In a memoir, Eastern World Westward published this year, Mr. Cohen recalls the culture of anti-Semitism that kept him and other bright Jewish law students from winning summer internships as prestigious law firms. But he found notable success anyway. After he graduated, he and his wife moved to Washington, where he clerked for Chief Justice Errol Warren and then for Justice Frank Furler. He worked for the firm Comington Berlin as a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney Office for the District of Columbia before moving in Berkeley, where he began teaching in 1959, starting with class on criminal law. The next year, the law school asked Mr. Cohen if he could find a suitable candidate for a Rockefeller Foundation grant to study Chinese language and law. China was then largely closed off to Americans, and little was known about how its legal system operated. When Mr. Cohen could not find any takers, he began wondering if he should put himself forward. Some colleagues were skeptical in his memoir. Mr. Cohen recalled the law school dean at the time, William the Prosser, telling him, Don't throw away your career on China. But Mr. Cohen took the plunge. His wife, who had the interest of Asian art, began to study Chinese history and culture. She later worked as an art historian, curator, writer, and photographer. After learning Chinese, Mr. Cohen moved with his family to Hong Kong in 1963. Documents dealing with China's legal system were scarce, and he began to interview refugees from the mainland, including former police officers, to glean insights into how the law really worked. In 1968, he published a trailblazing study, The Criminal Process in the People's Republic of China, 1949 to 1963. In all, he edited, wrote, or co-wrote more than a dozen books, many of them guides to law in China. He saw the great value of paying attention to what's going on in the ground, what's really happening down there, as opposite to just relying on written materials. Donner C. Clare, an emeritus professor at the George Washington University Law School, said in an interview. Mr. Cohen moved on to Harvard and became involved in pressing for the United States to establish diplomatic relations with Beijing. He also yearned to visit the Chinese mainland. His unsuccessful attempts include written pleas and a proposal to purchase a panda for an American dream. His change finally came in 1972 when he joined a small delegation of scholars who visited Beijing and other cities. Mr. Cohen recalls struggling to chat with residents over bowls of soya milk at a break eatery. The highlight of the trip was a dinner with China's Premier Zhou Enlai. I understood that you had done many books on our legal system, Mr. Cohen recalled Mr. Zhou telling him with a tone that gently implied that perhaps I had made more of China's legal system than China had. After Mao died and China's leader began to welcome more foreign visitors and investment, Mr. Cohen's knowledge of Chinese law was in demand for international companies. He began to give lectures to Chinese officials who were eager to learn how to draft contracts, commercial laws, and tax rules. Mr. Cohen decided to leave his position at Harvard and practice law full-time. In 1981, he joined the firm Powys, and he encouraged young lawyers to focus their careers on China. Many of them have recalled his boasting enthusiasm, his generosity in helping students and young lawyers. The bow tie he often wore. In this year, he and his wife spent much of their time in China, where he was involved in drafting contracts, advising companies, and settling commercial disputes. He had a threat to learn, said Yamin YF Chen, who Mr. Cohen recruited to Powys. We'd been in these grueling negotiations, and he asked these questions that might even go off on a tangent, because he was so crucial to understand where the other side was coming from. Mr. Cohen retired from Powys in 2000, but until 2020, he remained a professor at NYU, where he founded the U.S. Asian Law Institute. He continued to visit China and occasionally took on cases, including that of Zhao Yan, a researcher for the New York Times who was imprisoned on charge of fraud in 2006 after prosecutors dropped their initial accusation that he had stolen state secrets. Mr. Cohen also took a deep interest in the plight of two Chinese legal and human rights activists, Xu Ziyong and Ding Jiaxi, who were given long prison terms in 2023 on charge of subversion of state power, and of Chen Guangcheng, a bright legal activist who fled in detention in his home village and took refuge in an American embassy in Beijing before flying to the United States in 2012. He organized a seminar to make sure that people paid attention to the case. Mr. Din's wife, Sophie Luo, said in an interview, "He put me in touch with people and organized research. He didn't want them to be forgotten." Mr. Cohen often lamented China's increasingly repressive policies under Mr. Xi, but he rejected this prayer. "I'm not totally pessimistic, as some people are," he said in an interview published last year in the digital news magazine The Wheels China. China's development has been pendulum-like. At the moment, we are in the repressive period. That won't last. It can't last. Thanks for listening. 通过阅读这篇文章，了解到说，孔杰荣作为一个从事就是一个外国人，他从事的是关注中国的一个法律和人权的状况。他应该是有参与并研究了，包括像提到的，那个瞎子律师就是陈光雄，还有中国现在就是维权律师和人权活动人士许志勇和丁家喜。我知道这两位现在仍在因为3颠罪而被长期徒刑，就是还在坐牢。然后通过读的话，我觉得说，看这就是一个文化交流就是一个国家是否开放的一个很好的例子。就是说，就相当于说，前阵子推出的那个 K 字签证是一个道理的。就是说，如果我们希望说我们的国家能过得更好，那一定就是说我们不是要闭关锁国。我知道说那个 K 字签证，很多人，包括也有一位听众，然后他留下了说这是汉奸政策。但是比如说像孔杰荣，他关注中国，然后我知道大家只是说这是一个事业或者一个兴趣点，但是他关注这里不是他，因为他要3颠你，是因为就是他是在意一些人，因为你接触到你在你接触的范围之内，你去关心这一部分的人，我觉得这个才是一个做人的一个以人为本的根基。就是你从事的人或者你身边的人，你得去真正很有疑虑的去关心他们，不管说我们是生在哪个国家，我们长着什么样的肤色，什么样的面孔。所以通过这篇报告的话，我是觉得很是尊重这位孔律师。你看他还取了一个中国的名字，因为我在这里接触到的话，其实大部分外国人就是说他们还是蛮友善的，而且他们对于中国的印象也是挺好的。我知道我们可以为自己骄傲，我们也可以为自己自豪，但其实其他人他们跟我们也是普通人一样，他们就是大家会互相关心，说就像你关心邻居家的孩子是不是过得比我好，就是类似的。如果他们整天被父母就是比如说家暴或者怎么样的，那其实这种外在的因素，所以说文化交融有一个好处，就是大家是互相制约和互相监督，然后我们才能生活在一个更有人情味的这样一个世界里。我也不知道我在说啥呢，希望你能懂我所说的。谢谢你的倾听。如果你有听到这里的话，然后祝你生活愉快。